All right, good afternoon, and welcome to Opening Up ICT Education. I'm here with John Gonder, faculty at Las Positas College, and I'm Daly from the OpenCourseWare Consortium. We are thrilled to see you here this afternoon at the second to the last session. I have a few handouts and things that you can pick up as you leave, and I've also got a list for email addresses if you are interested in follow-up and getting copies of the slides and so forth. All right, everybody in the right session? Okay. So, once again, I mentioned I'm the director of the Community College Outreach at the OCW Consortium. And John, you want to introduce yourself?
John Gonder, Las Positas College.
Microphone's in the front here.
John Gonder, Las Positas College.
All right. So how many of you are faculty? Okay, so about 50%. The rest, staff, administrators? Okay, wonderful. All right. Any questions before we get started? Okay. I'm going to talk to you a little bit about the Community College Consortium for OER and a little bit about, I think a little bit about the open access movement. I'm doing a session right after this on MOOC, so in one of those sessions I am. And then I'm going to talk generally to you about what's been happening in the open space, probably for the last 20 years, because we're going to start a little bit with open source and then go through what's happening with open educational resources and open courses. And John is going to do the heavy lifting, and he's going to show you the materials, the applications, the books, the resources he uses with his students in his classroom to make things more affordable for them. So the OpenCourseWare Consortium, which is the parent organization of mine, got started originally about a decade ago, and it did start at MIT, and they remain a sustaining member, but it is now a worldwide consortium with over 280 institutions in 46 countries. And the mission, as you can read there, but for those who might not be able to see that, advancing formal and informal learning through the worldwide sharing and use of free, open, high-quality education materials organized as courses. Have any of you used any of the open courses from the OpenCourseWare Consortium? Okay, great. What subject?
It's been a while. I think 2 years ago, it was some philosophy course.
Okay.
I'm curious about. Yeah.
Oh, great. And there is a lot of ICT stuff. You'll see a lot from MIT stuff up there, but there's from institutions throughout the world. Great. At the community college, we were started in 2007, actually at Foothill College in Northern California, but it was always meant to be a consortium. And we're all about expanding access to education. In fact, Dr. Martha Cantor, which some of you may know, she was the chancellor there for many years, and then she was our Department of Ed undersecretary, thank you, for many years, in fact, until just a couple months ago. And she said, you know, all of this stuff is happening in the open space. Why are community colleges not involved? There are so many positive advantages around it, not only from materials for faculty, encouraging innovation and pedagogy, and of course the obvious one, which is making college more affordable for students. So she was a huge proponent of that. We do a lot of professional development. We do monthly online webinars that are free to all community college faculty, staff, students, where we share information about OER and ways to get involved. And our focus is the community college, although we do sometimes have speakers from 4 years, universities and colleges as well. But our focus is what's the best fit for our students, our staff, our faculty. And we have grown over time, and we're now over 240 colleges in 15 states and British Columbia, which is our province there. So what is the higher education context that has been driving some of this? Textbook costs have increased 82% in the last decade. Actually, there's an even funnier one. Since 1978, it's increased over 600%. I was in college in 1978. Not sure I should admit that. So it's become an issue for students. Student debt now exceeds $1 trillion. It's more than the credit card debt. That happened this summer. An average student debt upon graduation from a four-year college is $27,000. So there is a need to look at how we handle instructional materials and education. And educational openness is one of those ways to address that issue. And John and I are going to talk about these kind of four areas. OpenCourseWare, which I mentioned earlier, which those are courses that can be reused within your classroom, the materials. Open source software, of course, and that was kicked off over 20 years ago. Open educational resources, which is kind of the umbrella for all of open ed, including the courses. And something that's happened in the last few years is open access around research and journals. I don't know how many of you have been involved in that at all, or have you heard about the open access for journals? Yeah, it's a really important area in the biological sciences. And actually, some of my little giveaways up here are from the Public Library of Science, who's really supporting the use of open access for medical research, because it's so vital to get that research out in the community so that it can continue to enhance further research. So open source. Red Hat, of course, was kind of the one that kicked it off in the 90s with their Linux implementation. And these other ones are perhaps open source software that you use today in your classroom or to build websites. People heard of Moodle and WordPress? Anyone here use open source software? Okay, preaching to the choir. So that was really the kind of the beginning of this digital open movement. And those of you who were doing development back then, or even now, you remember they had the GNU license, right? And that was an open software license. And that was really the start of a lot of what we call the modern kind of open movement. Now, open educational resources didn't really officially come into being until the early 2000s. And just along with that at that time was the creation of Creative Commons. And Creative Commons is the license that's generally used for education, music, creative arts in general. So the GNU and those software licenses have kind of stayed in the open source world, and Creative Commons is the one. And so for us as educators, an open educational resource is either public domain, which public domain being anything that comes from the government, generally speaking. All government-produced materials are public domain with some minor exceptions. Or it can be materials, like Shakespeare and things that have expired. The copyright's expired, and copyright law has become more and more restrictive. So it's 70 years plus from the time of the holder of the copyright's death. It's 70 years past their death now, since the late 90s. So open licensing has become a really important way to help us to share things. And when we talk about OER, it can be any aspect of education, from curriculum sheets, textbooks, images, videos, assessments, etc. And really the power of this is that you can take these materials and you can adapt them for your students. So you can contextualize them for your students. So you could take something from MIT if you wanted to. Your students may not be prepared for that level of work. You might be contextualizing for language or technical knowledge, and that's what an open license promises, is the ability to revise materials and freely redistribute them. The government has been a big supporter of pushing open resources. How many of you have heard of the tax grants? One person. Okay.
We got some.
Where are you? Are you C6 or are you down in? Are you in Los Angeles? You're not part of the. Which consortium are you at that got the grant?
Yeah, CPC in Texas.
Oh, I'm sorry. That's right. I forget. We're not all California folks here. Wonderful. So can you tell people what the tax grant is then?
Yeah, the Trade Adjustment Act for Community College something.
That's pretty good.
Yeah, it's the $2 billion grant. What we got was a $21 million grant among 7 colleges to build IT and GIS.
Exciting. All right. So, and what's your name?
Philip Davis.
Philip. Okay, so Philip Davis just explained to us that he's at a college in Texas, and they got $21 million as part of a tax grant to develop ICT and IT curriculum.
All of which are open source under Creative Commons.
So if you have needs for IT curriculum and GIS, you can come to Phil and say, you know what? We'd love to take your material. And the nice thing about that is you can take Phil's material and then you can say, well, you know, I want to add this other component to it. And then you can give it back to Phil with these new enhancements. So it's part of creating this common environment where we can all improve upon each other's work. So it's very exciting. And California has gotten some, actually all 50 states have gotten money. And I'm surprised that more of you have heard of the tax grant, right? And so it's a middle skills kind of training. So it's for workers that have been offshored, or sorry, their jobs have been offshored, or they've been out of the workplace for a while. In California, some of the LA colleges have gotten money. LA Trade Tech is one of the tax grantees. Generally, they are consortiums. As Phil mentioned, it's 7 colleges that are working on this. Also, the C6, which is Central Valley, there were 6 colleges. It's headed up by West Hills. They got money, and they're doing more health. So it's primarily manufacturing, health, IT. I have a list in a different presentation, but it's around getting people back to work in middle skill level presentations. And I went to a presentation on middle skills yesterday, which was excellent. So ICT courses that are out there that you can use. Many of these are introductory computer science type courses and IT courses. So the Open Learning Initiative at Carnegie Mellon, I don't know if anyone's used any of their courses. These are full courses that actually have assessments built in, which not all of them do. So Sailor is another one that has done a lot of around IT and basic office skills. So for those of you who teach basic office skills, Sailor.org has done a lot around that. The Open University in the UK has actually also done Introduction to IT and Computer Science, which are free and open to use. We've had other colleges take their materials. Sometimes you do have to adjust the language because it's British English. And that's something to keep in mind as you share this at a global level. And of course, the OpenCourseWare Consortium has top universities from throughout the world that are producing materials, and many of them are translated. So not only IT, but water management, all sorts of different resources there for those of you who might be in other disciplines. So textbooks, we know that this has been a huge issue for students. There are ICT textbooks available. I have to say that sometimes they are not the most up-to-date textbooks. So for introductory courses, they're wonderful for overviews. And John is going to talk to you about more of the textbooks at ACM. But I would say these are places that you can go and search for materials. If you are teaching a course where there's a $150 textbook for your students and you feel that maybe that textbook isn't fulfilling the needs, you can certainly go to these places and find materials that can be incorporated in. And so I recommend those places. And now I wanted to talk to you a little bit about open access, which is probably not on everybody's radar as a community college faculty, and I know many of you are at the community college. But this has been a big issue in the research area, is that colleges and universities have not been able to afford to continue to purchase up-to-date research. And so open access has become a big push worldwide. The strategies are that instead of charging institutions on the back end for these large subscriptions, which are thousands of dollars a year, like per subscription, the author's institution is now paying a modest fee for refereeing and publishing outgoing articles. And in some of your programs, you may have some students who are interested in doing this. At the four-year colleges, some undergraduates are actually doing some journal articles that they work on with their faculty. And the open access is a very nice option for an institution that would like to get their materials out there and get further exposure about the work they're doing. So once again, the government is really getting behind this. So there was a White House directive that passed in February that all federal agencies that have budgets in excess of $100 million must make their research available within 1 year of publication to the public. This seems like a natural thing, but in fact, this hasn't been true, with some exceptions. National Science Foundation and NIH have actually passed this a little bit earlier, but a lot of our research that's been publicly funded has been hidden behind paywalls. And so the White House came out and said, you know, we need to be sharing this with the public. This should not be, the public shouldn't, first of all, pay for it in their tax dollars and then have to pay for it again to purchase the journal, or through their universities to purchase the journal. So California State has a bill that is progressing through. It's AB 609. I have some buttons because the Public Library of Science, which is just down the street here, is a big proponent of open access. They have about 30 very high quality open access journals that they publish, and they're trying to help this move through the state. So what are we doing in the ICT world? Well, IEEE last year came out with this and said, yep, we're going to an open access model. And they have many fully open access journals now, and in fact, they're emerging topics in computing. So the most interesting areas are now open access. So wireless, mobile, socio-technical, special issues. So go up there, and all those journals are now available for you for free. And I suggest that your students would find excerpts from these journal articles quite interesting. Maybe not the entire journal article, but you know, I think there's really interesting work being done. They're just doing a lot in that area, and IEEE receives more than 3 times the number of patent citations of competing publishers. So this is a great place to find information, and it's cutting edge information. But I think, you know, we owe it to our students to make them aware of these materials. Whether they go to them or not, it will be up to them. And ACM, which is, yeah.
I was just going to build on what you were saying, that in reality, rather than paying $150 for a book that's pre-digested a lot of this stuff that might be a couple years old, you're doing your students a tremendous service by having them go and research canonical sources of current information, because this is what they'll need to do when they're out in the real world. So if you remember the taxonomy, getting stuff given to you is at the right left-hand level of the bottom of the critical thinking taxonomy, and being able to go out and find some stuff and determine what's the most useful information is way over toward the best.
All right, and actually, John made me aware of the ACM, the Association for Computing Machinery, and some of the wonderful things they're doing. They are also moving to open access on their journals. They're going a little bit slower than IEEE, which they're just kind of feeling their way, but their authors who are now publishing with them may choose open access, and also their SIG conferences, which I'm sure some of you do attend, the ACM SIG conferences. The materials will be available during the time of the conference with open access. And at this point, well, I'm almost ready to put it over to John, and John's going to talk a little bit about some of the wonderful career resources and other materials in the classroom. So before I turn it over to John, he's going to give you the real-world examples of the materials that he brings into his classroom. I just hope that I'm going to leave you that openness is a win-win for faculty and students. And you'll find that as you share, good things can happen to your materials that you put out there. And it really is a social justice issue, and our mission at the community college is open access for all. And to the extent that we can support that, I think it's a laudable goal. Mm-hmm. All right, John?
Yeah.
Sure. Thanks. It really is a social justice issue. It really is. So Las Positas College, and there we go. So my name's John Gonder. Been around, collected some acronyms, some letters after a while. I've been doing online classes for a while now. Started out at Los Medanos College. I put in all their network classrooms, and I had the great pleasure, in case you don't know the name of Al Garber, of studying under Al Garber, who is the architect of the California State University televideo conferencing system statewide. And that was just a wonderful opportunity. I wanted to just give him the honor that he deserves. And so I've been doing a lot of stuff. Installed the Blackboard server version 1.0. And it still doesn't work a lot better. We do a lot of online classes at LPC. I teach all my classes as online hybrid, whether they're officially called online or whether they're called face-to-face. And so the rubric for all my classes is, if you're on campus, check the iCal, come to the lecture. If you're available, go to CCC Confer. I record it, get it later, video, MP3, iPod video download, because that's what the students want. So what I want to talk about is a few of the things that I use, have tried out, or somebody has told me about. And the rubric is, it needs to fill a need, and it should, if at all possible, be free, run on 3 operating systems, and be able to be learned in 5 minutes. So my PowerPoint is going to be available for you later here if you want, and we'll also have it for the MPICT folks. If you got a CMS, you know that by and large it's death by 1,000 clicks. And so I try to do as much as possible to avoid using content management system at all. One of the biggest problems is communicating between classes. Because even if you create a cafe forum, I've got 5 different classes. There's 5 different silos where the same question is asked over and over again in every silo. So I was really happy when Colin Schatz told me about Piazza, which is free, and I can create one class called Gonder 101, which is one place. All students have to register in Piazza, and they're all in one place. So everybody asks a question, student can answer it. I can click it's a good question, click it's a good answer. I can post a piece of information, and it instantly is sent up to every student in every class. If I want, I can click email them all right now and override their preferences of getting a daily digest if it's something really important. So with a single click, all 120 to 150 students can get it. One question and answer to rule them all, piazza.com. It's very, very cool. I also get around using 10 clicks to upload every individual file to each individual class by having all my stuff on one FTP site. So on my PC, I have a folder for each class, and then I use just an FTP program. There's any number of them around. I happen to use Transmit, which itself is not free, but there's a lot of free ones. To every day, just upload everything that's new or changed. And with a single click, it updates all the information for every single class. The other thing that I've gone to doing is having a single student resource area, so that if I've got a piece of information like Cisco Visio icons or cheat sheets or something that's useful for all these classes, I just keep one copy in one place. So it really helps with the curation. And again, anything new or changed is uploaded with that single click. So a folder per class, an index page in each folder, so when they go in there, they don't just see, you know, a list of folders. And here's where an important thing that I use is TiddlyWiki. Invented by an Englishman, hence the name. Free open source software. It's an HTML page that has embedded code to do all kinds of really cool stuff. And I use actually a very vanilla version of TiddlyWiki. There's tons of stuff you can do with it. But just as I have it for all of my classes, all the same links are all in the same spot. All the basic information's in the middle. Everything new or changed shows under the timeline. Any tags, they can look at them by tags, and then there's a search. So
I'm sorry, you use that instead of presenting the information in the multiple Blackboard shells. Is that what I'm understanding?
Absolutely, yeah. I don't put any curriculum into Blackboard at all. They put stuff into the forums when they're giving me stuff to turn in, and you know, grades are in there, but other than that, just say no. to Blackboard.
And Piazza is for, you're saying like for quizzes?
Piazza, no, is for question and answers. So one place for all questions and all answers for how do I do this, what does this mean, what's my, what am I graded on, what's my name.
And do you have different, like, different question answer discussion areas for your different classes, or are people from different classes putting questions into the same?
Right. So the same class is asked. The same question is asked in only one place. So if I've got a question about what time is the lecture, it goes into Piazza, and everybody sees the answer. If I have a question about, where is the lecture, how do I get to this, how do I get to that?
But I mean, for the different classes, do you have different discussion forums?
You're talking about tests?
Pardon me?
I think if I...
There's no discussion for, well, there are forums inside each Blackboard class, right? So we don't, for my classes, we don't have discussions per se. They might post a report and they might talk about it inside that forum. But for general fact type questions, Piazza is where it's at.
The same class, you might have multiple classes, the same class.
Right. Where is the library doesn't get asked 5 times in all these different places, and I answer it 5 times in 5 different places, and then they ask it again. One of the coolest things about the TiddlyWiki is search on any string. Here's every occurrence of that string in timeline order. And there's that information that, so again, within their class page, I have my glasses on to do this.
Doing the PowerPoint.
Yes. I'm in Microsoft PowerPoint.
What do you want to do?
I want to direct a slideshow.
Shift F5.
Oh, Shift F5. Oh. Why didn't I remember that? So I call it Windows. Okay, so everything you need is in TiddlyWiki. It's free, open source. Everything's built in. There's actually hundreds of plugins to do almost anything you could ever want to do. I only use a couple, but free open source stuff. I already did the search demo. QR codes are pretty cool. This is a great place to make QR codes. You can do a little fancier with a picture in the middle if you want. Right? This would take you to CCC Confer. And so I use them in places like, posted outside my office. So if somebody comes out with their smartphone, they can just go to my website. Yeah, books cost a lot, and so none of my students buy any books anymore because we use the Association of Computing Machinery. Question?
John, I would like to know how popular are you with the student bookstore?
I'm very unpopular with the bookstore. I don't care.
Well, I mean, our student bookstore, I don't know if it's like yours, but it's a profit center. It supports our students' education. And when we try to pass an open source textbook for digital forensics, we have to fight, or we have to. Our faculty do.
Yeah.
How do you get around that when our, when our students?
Tenure.
Which college are you in?
So speaking, you go to all the books at home.
So I can decide what book is going to be. I can decide what book is going to be for my course, or no book. In this case, what I decide for every class is they have to join and be a student member of the ACM, which gets them 500 books online and about 100 training classes that covers all of the certifications. Practically all of the certifications. Yeah.
So I think that's the question that comes up all the time when I use training on open textbooks, which is not what I'm doing today, but
I'm sorry. So that's a question that comes up often about the bookstore. And it does require really kind of looking at it from a whole college point of view, and possibly getting your student government involved as well to make the case for why the affordability for students might be something that should override that.
Yeah.
But there's ways to potentially bring the bookstore into the picture as well. And I don't want to interfere with John's. Please
well, yes,
later.
Make them aware of the fact that for my students, they're saving $700–800 a year. Good question.
I just wanted to comment that we do also support open source books as well. The only issue is that we do have to be careful of copyright issues.
Right.
And making sure that we have that.
Yeah, it's important to be aware of copyright issues if you're using the free open source textbooks, which these are not.
Which these are.
This is $20 a year, so you get 500 books, 100 classes. As a member of the ACM, the student can have a mentor assigned to them. They can have an ACM email that they can use in their job search, and a whole bunch of other things. But what's really cool for me is these are online classes, right? So you're used to putting reserve books on for references, go down to the library, drive in from Patterson to the library to look at a reserve. I can tell each class, here's a list of 12 books to bookmark and use as references, and I can also have them be of a variety of levels, everything from a high-level textbook down to networking for dummies. So whatever their current location is in that knowledge path, and we have a lot of people at different locations, they can have a reference that works for them, not just one textbook. As far as the Skillsoft training courses, look at that, all the Microsoft, Oracle, LPI, Linux, all the CompTIA, all the Cisco. So I've got all these reserve books on. There's actually a whole bunch of business books on there as well, business training. And students get all those free with ACM. So I can choose chapters out of the book, and I can choose a chunk out of training that maybe we're not doing the Cisco training in this particular class, say Security Plus, but there's a really great training section in that course that I can just say, go do that. It includes videos, it includes tests at the end of it, and so they can show me their scores. What this does not give me is it does not give me pre-cooked PowerPoints. It does not give me hundreds of stupid multiple choice questions to put into Blackboard. So I have to do a lot of work.
All the books seem to be older versions.
Some of them are older versions. In some cases that matters. In a lot of cases it doesn't, where we're talking about, say, TCP/IP. The Kozurok book actually has a copyright of about 2008, but it's one of the best written versions of the TCP/IP book that there is. Of course, then the other important thing to have is to have a virtual machine manager like VM Player or VirtualBox, which are free. So you can make use of virtual appliances already done. You can just download and use for a lot of different purposes. An example would be an already done PBX for VoIP, so my students can have their own, in my VoIP class, their own PBX world right on their own device. And you can have installed web servers, IDSs, a lot of network labs. I know you make a lot of use of that in your classes. And so there's a lot of stuff already done for you. If you're teaching web classes, if you're, you want to have a server already done, you want to have a Joomla box, you want to have a WordPress box, those are already done. Just download the ISO, give them to your students. So I can have a whole bunch of, actually for me, I can have a whole bunch of different operating systems that contain already installed, configured, and serialized software that I can carry with me anywhere I work, except hooking it up here. So regardless of what classroom I'm in, I can have whatever software is really important but only runs on a particular operating system. So pre-made virtual computers, students can blow them up. It's really good. That's better, you know, crank it down till it cracks, then back it off half a turn. I used to be a mechanic. So yeah, there's an example of an XP box that has Cisco Pilot, a very high-level piece of analytics software. It actually costs a lot, and I can carry that with me anywhere. Here's my Wi-Fi inspector, just a whole bunch of stuff, and it's just a file. Gantt project, Wayne Phillips turned me on to this free open source Gantt software, runs on any OS. So you can really add that in really easily for your students to say, okay, you're doing a report about how I'd go about doing this project, include a timeline in that. One of the things that Wayne was doing with this was having his students create a timeline for their homework as a way of encouraging them to sort of plan things out, which they sometimes don't. If you haven't used SketchUp, maybe think about it. If you do any kinds of mechanical drawings or that in your classes or might want to use them, it's a great piece of software. There's a lot of YouTube training out there. Not quite a 5-minute learning curve, but there's also lots of great libraries out there of stuff already done in SketchUp. I'm still looking for the ultimate EPUB reader, so I'm starting to get a good collection of not just PDFs, but public books and public presentations out there. This seems to be the current choice, although it's not perfect. Adobe Digital Editions, it's free, runs on Mac and Windows. If you're thinking about converting your email archives or playing with email at all, this is a really great, this is not free, but it's not very expensive either. Actually, there's a free version, but you can't convert tons of stuff with it. This is actually a standard tool for digital forensics. But Emailchemy converts between, your old email system from 10 years ago, maybe you got an archive you did, and now you're on Microsoft Outlook or whatever. Very useful piece of software. Mail Steward is another one. Word clouds, pretty cool. Wordle.net. Some people are using that already, I can see. One kind of cool thing is you can just grab a web page and it'll bring everything off the web page. Maybe it brings words you don't want. So you can actually just grab the web page and make a word list and edit it. One cool thing, if you want something to be bigger, just put it in a bunch of times and it gets bigger. So that's pretty cool. Packetlife.net is a location for a lot of cheat sheets, all the tech cheat sheets. They got about 3 dozen or so on there, and they're really quite good. Spanning tree, OSPF, PPP, VoIP basics. Here's a little closer look at an example of what one might look like. The list of what's current. I have more cheat sheets than that from some other sources, but this is one great quick source for a lot of tech cheat sheets. I don't know if they have one for Java though. I'm looking at the CS guy. CMAP tools, brain maps. Free, open source, runs on 3 OS's, 5-minute learning curve. It actually is also, it's a client-server box. It's actually got a client-server module built into it, which you don't even need to think about unless you want to take a look at some of the thousands of CMAPs that have been shared by companies like Boeing out on the net free. But I use it a lot, just, Google CMAP or copy that down. I use it quite a bit as if I was writing on the whiteboard when I'm lecturing online, because it lets me write some stuff down really quickly. Just click and create this, arrow between, and then I save it out. I save it out as a graphic typically, and then throw it in student resources. I created a sitemap for each of the classes with CMAP because you can embed live links in there. So this was a great visual way of helping my students understand, the web of life that I've gotten them into. Here's your class page, and you can get to any of these places with a click from your class page. So it's pretty cool. I like it a lot. We're talking about OSPF, right? So this is not particularly, all aligned and all straight, but this is just as if I was doing it on the whiteboard, but I was doing it on the computer, the desktop that I was sharing with CCC Confer. And then I just saved it out when I was done. Question?
Does it actually develop itself incrementally, or does it show up all at once?
No, you double click and you make a new box.
Well, so you're building.
And you double click and make a new box, and you just drag to make a connection.
You're building it to the lecture.
Yeah, building it as I talk. So I'm talking about, well, how are we going to determine router ID? Well, first you got to see, is the router ID command configured, yes or no? And then next. So very, very cool stuff.
That's all the CMAP.
This is all CMAP. Yeah. So in VMware, really important to talk about, to bring out the relationships of the OSI model to the aspects of VMware high availability was what I was doing here. Then saved it out. And then of course I record with Camtasia, which is not free, but it's really worth it. And although CCC Confer is awesome, and their tech support is world class. You have 3 rings, and you have a human on this continent who will tell you the truth. That's tech support to me. Camtasia tech support.
Crazy, John. That's usually what we say.
No. Yeah. Well, they say if John can't break it, then it's ready to roll out. Cranks down till it cracks. Camtasia is not free, but it's worth it. I record CCC Confer as a client. I present on the Mac. I have a PC logged on so I can see what they see, and I'm recording Camtasia. I also put my voice in analog because I don't like VoIP. And then I produce it out, and it's saved down to their site. World-class tech support, excellent tutorials. I record local so I can see what they see. As different from recording in CCC Confer, I can edit a little bit. So I create chapter markers, although I learned pause button is my friend. Hit pause while I search for the file I want to present. And if you want more details on how I do all my recordings and what the equipment is and exactly what I use, just give me a holler. I'll be happy to help you with anything you want. So I just share my whole desktop, which means I can have all my apps up. I can have my virtual appliances. I'm often running 3 operating systems at the same time because I'm pinging this guy, and then I'm capturing that with Wireshark, and we just go back and forth. So sharing the desktop is the best. And then when I save it out, I got my chapter markers, MP3, iPod video, 1 click loaded up. But also, especially, it's creative laziness is kind of the way I think about it. Instead of talking about the same thing 5 times in 5 different lectures, maybe 5 different ways, I'll create one how-to video, how to do CMAP concept maps, like this one. Or I created a writing rubric video with one of our English instructors and put that up, and that's required viewing at the beginning of every semester. Here's my rubric, here's what it means, here's how to use it. So it's really handy. One of the last pieces, of course, is Wireshark, the world's most common way of capturing packets. And week 3 in every class is Wireshark week, so you capture some packets, and depending on the class, you look at different aspects of it. Everything you need is right on Wireshark. Now, these days, with better videos than I could ever do on how to put it in and get it organized, and lots of great information and examples. So, dive right in. Even if you're not that familiar with Wireshark. They have a repository, and there's several other links to repositories for oddball protocols. So if you've got some oddball protocols you want to talk about, there's a lot of great information there. And one of the very best books on Wireshark is there free for you in ACM. So if you want to assign reading, or then you want to use one of these things as a lab, it's right there in ACM. The last important part about Wireshark these days, that's my cat Daly, is the PCAP-NG format allows you to add comments as metadata, which means that when I capture something and there's something interesting about it, like this iPad sends out 1 DNS request, doesn't even listen for an answer, demands a lease time of 90 days, then sends out 3 gratuitous ARPs, and then starts using the IP before the DNS server or the DHCP server even responds. I can make a report on that, right-click and add a comment to the interesting packets, save out only those 5 out of 20,000 packets, and save that out, which means you can now use Wireshark and have them turn stuff in, and you're not trying to grade 20,000 packets. You're grading only the 5 that have interesting comments. You can just do that really easily. So you can just go grab the summary of the comments, see the summary in one place, create a trace file. It's very cool. Cloudshark.org for sharing traces. But the last piece is you need to anonymize your traces and get your password out of there, or hide the IPs of your organization. So Trace Wrangler, which is free open source but runs just on Windows, thank you, Jasper, will anonymize your traces and, you know, change all the IP numbers, change all the MAC addresses, remove all kinds of information for you with just a couple of clicks. Last piece, I'm starting to make manuals. Steps is not free, but it's a good one. I'm still searching for the ultimate thing to create manuals when I do something as a demo so that I can grab a screenshot. Here's my writing. When I'm all done, just save it as a PDF and here's your lab manual. So Steps is the thing that I'm currently using for that. And that's all we had time for. But if you have any questions, here's the PowerPoint. Here's me. Here's my cat.